God has not given us the spirit of fear. No, 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 but stir up to get. Wow, that was really bad. Um, welcome back to the Creators World Podcast. I'm your host, Justin Reeves. This is not a singing podcast whatsoever, but this is a podcast for Christian creatives, entrepreneurs, visionaries, and purpose seekers to be refreshed, renewed, and revitalized for their God given purposes and callings because we know the road is tough, life is rough, and it's just ghetto out here. And everybody needs a little help and some resources, some friends, some community, some people that will speak truth to power, that will just do random stuff and also entertain you a little bit with my random serenade. So, here in the Creators World podcast, we talk about everything, all things creative, all things Christian creative. So we do little Bible studies, we do some stories, we do whatever. But today, I want you guys to drop in the comments something that you are afraid of. Put in the comments. Let's talk about it. It's not really live tonight, but you can go back in and see if somebody else is afraid of what you're afraid of. So for me, for example, I am afraid of snakes. Like if I see a snake, I am going the opposite direction. Like it doesn't matter if there's $1 million in a bed of snakes, it's not happening. I will stay poor. I don't really know where the fear is comes from snakes. Like I think it's a biblical thing. Because like as a kid, when you read the kids' Bible, you read there was a snake in the garden with Adam and Eve and the cause to sin. And like later on you realize like it probably wasn't a legitimate snake. Um, but I don't know. I've never been bitten by a snake. No one I know has died from a snake. I just don't like them. But other than snakes, I don't have like a lot of like like tangible fears, if that makes sense. I'm not really afraid of bugs. I kill spiders for people. I used to kill all the spiders for my ex-girlfriend all the time. Um, I don't know. Like, I'm not really afraid of heights. I don't necessarily like live on heights, but I'm not afraid of them. Um, I don't just think of like common themes. Uh, I guess I'm afraid of dying. I feel like no one's happy to die. I feel like I know it's gonna happen one day. I would like it to be quick. This is about to get morbid. We're gonna move on. Um, I don't know. Yeah, I don't think I'm really afraid of other stuff. Like I think a natural fear of like jungle animals because like who's not going to be afraid? Like if a lion is coming, those are the fears that I feel like are natural, right? Because if a lion is racing towards you and looks hungry, you should be afraid. And to like kind of move into like the main conversation, fear can cause you to do like three things. So like psychologists will always say there's fight or flight, but there's fight, there's flight, and then there's a third one which I don't really remember. Um, we're gonna look that up because I think it's important. It may not actually be important. It's like fight, flight, or freeze. Fight, flight, or yeah. I was looking. Um, Fight, flight, or freeze. Yeah, freeze. Yeah. Like in Black Panther when she was like, "You froze." Um, but yeah, so like fear can cause you to fight. So like you can be crazy and decide that I'm gonna stick up for yourself. I think that's normally like when there's something to be um like captured or saved, right? So like you might fight the lion if you're a parent and your kid is out there, or like someone that you love is there, right? You're going to run away from the lion if you just have common sense and you're going to tell the people with you to run. And then the freeze is the third one. I couldn't remember. It was like paralysis was the one, but I knew it was like a F. Where you are like so overcome with fear that you can't actually make a decision. And so in these conversations of fear, I realized this past week something I knew about myself, but really realized it. I do not take risks at all. Like I am extremely risk adverse. And as a creative entrepreneur, as a business owner, not taking risk has is going to be a problem. So today I want to talk all about like taking risks, but like really talk about my life. Because like I said, there's no point in doing this and like basically a solo podcast if I'm not going to talk about myself. So also into Black History. Get your Black History merch on my site. 10% off, I believe, through February 28th. But anyway, um, yeah, so taking risk is something that I don't like to do. And it was something that came to like a huge realization. Like I knew this about myself, but I didn't think I realized how much it was a problem until like last week. Like I knew it was an issue, but last week was bad. So we're gonna go back to last week. So last week, I had dinner with two really good friends. They went to the crate as well, and we were gonna just kind of debrief it, talk about it, and whatever. So we talked about it, we laughed, had a good time. The conversation was good, the feedback was good. I was taking in like all the feedback because here's one thing about me: I will accept negative feedback a lot better than I accept positive feedback. So the majority of the stuff they said was like either positive or neutral, and we got to the negative feedback, and I really agreed with it. Like it was in line with what you guys had said already, and it was essentially just like I was doing too much, which I agree with, and but something that my friends challenged me with. They were like, because they know me, they were like, do you run your events the way you run other people's events? So if this was like the Poets and Autumn tour, like, do you put the same level of like scrutiny or like I don't know the word, like not effort, but like maybe effort. Do you put the same effort towards your events as you do like external events that you're paid for, you're contracted to do? And I was like, no, I think I'm doing a whole lot better, but not really. So there's another event that I do called Holy Hoodlum. And the idea I have for Holy Hoodlum this coming year is really, really good. You guys should come. It'll be in August. I don't know when. And we're going to get to the why I don't know when in a second. So we start talking about the event and things like that. And both of them are extremely excited. And at first, I really didn't plan, like, to be honest, I didn't plan to do a Holy Hoodlum this year. I had planned to just kind of like keep it cool. Like, you know, I love producing events. I don't love losing money. But and so far we've lost money on all the events, things of that nature. And so we were talking about this, and they were talking about like the need for consistency and people just get used to things. And they were like, they were like, what's your idea for Holy Hoodlum? And I was like, I'm not really gonna do it. And they just kind of looked at me. They're like, that's not what we asked. We said, what's your idea? So I told them the idea. I won't share that today. We'll probably talk about that later. But what was interesting is we're talking about it and we're getting excited about it. I'm getting excited about it, which if you know me, it takes a lot to get me excited before an event is like a week away. I was like, yeah, I think this could actually work. And then they told me, they were like, so where are you going to do it? And I was like, at the church. And then they kind of looked at me and they were like, the idea that you're talking about should be done like in a market city. So for those of you who don't necessarily know what that means, like just think big city, metropolitan like city. So for those of you who don't know, I live in Stafford, Virginia. Uh, don't come creep on me. um, excuse me, I live in Stafford, Virginia. The O2 is in Woodbridge, Virginia, which is a little bit north of where I live. And then DC is north of that. And so DC, of course, is the big city here, right? Like that's where the big events are and stuff like that. And so they were suggesting that I do it in DC. So the reason I don't typically do things in DC is DC costs money. DC is outside of the region of where we go to, right? Like people will travel to DC for an event, but to me, I don't feel like, and this is where the issues started to creep in. I was like, I don't know if I'm ready for a DC event. And so they looked at me and they stopped and they were like, Justin, you have done events in DC and like the outskirts of DC for years now. I was like, no, I haven't. And they're like, Poets and Autumn was where? And I was like, well, in Maryland slash DC. The We Need to Talk tour was right outside of DC. I've done conferences in DC. I've done events in DC. And they were like, you've done stuff in DC, but you don't want to do your stuff in DC. And they're like, are you against DC? And I was like, no. And so the woman that was there, just not really using their names. Actually, I will use their name, Tyra and Micah. So Tyra, she was like, she essentially like challenged me like hardcore, and she was like, why don't you have faith in your own stuff? And so I had to sit down and think about it. I was like, DC costs more money. It just does. Because now the church that I go to, I'm a member there. So it's not necessarily that I get it for free, but I get a nice rate, right? I just do. And so now in a DC venue, the ones, especially the ones I know and other ones, you're spending more money. So she was like, but your idea is really good, so you're gonna attract people. And I was like, I'm not sure about that. And so Micah, who is you've seen, well, you've seen him on the podcast, and we talked about his episode of that, how he just has a lot of faith. And so he is basically responds, and he was like, "I think you should go for 1,000 people." And I'm like, "What?" Let me back up. They asked me, they were like, "Well, how many people do you want to do this for?" I was like, "I don't know, like 50." And they looked at me and they were like, "You got 50 people last year in Woodbridge. You paid like 50 plus people paid last year, plus like the regular staff and whatever that was there." And so they were like, you had over 50 people in the room last year just by your merit, your advertising, your whatever. Then they were like, so if you really go hard in this and put it in a place that's more central to people, which is DC, which is more younger people, more younger Christians, things like that, like more of a millennial base, more of a Gen Z base as well. They were like, you're more than likely going to get 50 alone, and then plus your your marketing and whatever. And I was like, okay, so 100. And they just kind of looked at me, and I was like, I was like, I've never done something with that many people. And then they looked at me again, and they were like, you did the Acts 242 conference that had like 7,000 people. You did Poets and Autumn that's had over 1,000. Like, you've done We Need to Talk that had over 1,500. Like, you've done numbers. And I was like, yeah, but it's not me. And they were like, but did you not produce the show, get the event logistics, get people in, get people out, run the volunteers, like actually run the event? It just was not you on stage. And I was like, yeah. And they were like, the on stage part is the least amount of work. And I was like, I mean, yeah. And so in all of that, as I started thinking about it, I was like, wow, like I just will let fear like really deter me from taking any sort of risk. Now, do I think 1,000 people is what I should aim for? No. Do I think 50 people is what I should aim for? No, because the fact is, you should be aspiring when you're doing things to go to the next level. And the next level doesn't always mean people, like numbers, right? Like I want us to get out of that. In this case, for me, yes, because numbers are something that I shy away from. Like I'm afraid of more people, not because I'm afraid of how to handle more people, but I don't believe that I my ideas are worthy of more people. And so the and we're gonna talk about this a lot. It's like, what is your fear rooted in? And for me, it's like lack of confidence and like not feeling secure, which is kind of confidence as well, but a little bit different, but like not feeling secure that I have the idea that can bring that. Because in my mind, I'm not like the people who I've seen put on these events that attract the thousands, the 500, like the 500, the 250, right? You know what I'm saying? Like that's not me. I don't have the followers. I don't have the whatever. So like just thinking through that logic and overthinking, and I'm just like, I just I just can't. I just cannot. And so I want to talk about that fear and how that fear prevents us from taking risks. Because the fact is, the matter is, there is like little risk, little to no reward, and that's just unfortunately the facts. Like I have lived a life that is pretty risk free. I'm a very risk adverse person. I don't take risks. Everything I do in life is calculated. So I have done all my events at the church. Why? Because I know that I know the venue because I go there like every Sunday. I know all the equipment. I know how to work it. Like I can work the soundboard if necessary. I know how to work the LED wall. I know how to work the lights. I don't know the music, but my musicians, like the majority of them, have either played at the church at one point or currently play at the church. So like nothing about that is a factor, right? I know that I can kind of come in and stash stuff in different places, so I don't have to put on my full thinking event cap when it comes to the church because there's very little risk. Like I know the people who are in charge, like It's just it is what it is, right? Um, I know a certain amount of people will come because they're used to coming to the church, right? Like the church members will probably come. Like some of the people will come and help fill up some of the seats. Here's the problem: when you do DC now, DC is like without traffic, which is rare. It's at least a 30 or 35-minute drive from Woodbridge, from the church. And then from my house, it's like 45-ish, 50-ish minutes. Again, no traffic. It varies, but you know, I've done it in 40 once, but we're not going to talk about that. So like it's like okay, now there's a distance factor. So all the people like my parents and the people who normally like support the event, like they may not want to come to DC that far on a Friday or Saturday, like these are just the things that I was sitting here thinking through like, oh my gosh, like this is going to be very different. Like if I'm going to do a DC event, like I I can't just like I've done events the year that my dad sorry, it's so unprofessional. My my car alarm just went off because I'm sitting on my key. Just crazy. I was like, I know that sound. That sounds like my alarm. The year that my dad had cancer, I was going to do Carols for a Cause and then a Christmas version of Holy Hoodlum, and I canceled it. But it was okay because I don't have to pay the deposit from my church, right? Like I was able to make that change. If I rent a venue, I'm actually going to be held responsible for paying a deposit. Like I know for my church, I can wait until ticket sales start coming in for me to pay the rental amount that we have to pay at my church. It's just a fact. I know that. They don't even really say like there's no contract, there's no nothing, there's really nothing, right? And if any of y'all are watching it, like let's keep it that way. But there's really nothing there. I know what I need to pay, but I kind of wait until the week of, which is when the ticket sales start coming in and stuff like that. For something like this, if they say your venue cost is let's just say $1,000, they probably want a 50% deposit. I have to come up with $500 now without knowing who's going to come or if they're going to come. No one's ever come here before. I've got to do site surveys. There's a whole lot of stuff. And logistically, it's really not an issue because I've done this stuff before. But it's more so like I have to put myself in the mindset that my stuff is worth the same amount of effort that you've done for Ezekiel stuff and Jackie Hill Perry stuff and Preston's book launch and all these different things and these people that you work with and like, all the stuff that you do. Like I need to basically treat myself the same way I treat them. But in my mind, that does not happen. It doesn't. Because in my mind, my ideas aren't good enough. Because in my mind, I'm still starting out. Which in reality, in terms of years of putting on my own events, yeah, it's the first event I put on for myself was in 2019, and then the pandemic really shut things down. So then 2022 was when I was back swinging. So now it's like this is the third consecutive year of putting on in-person events. So there is a newness to what I'm doing. But in terms of my actual knowledge, like even in 2021, I put on an event for Ezekiel in Atlanta. Like I put on and it was big. It was like over 3 nights. It was essentially a conference, but three separate events or whatever. So it's like knowing the logistics of these things, knowing how this stuff happens, and knowing how to produce things, knowing how the flow of events go, know how to rally volunteers, know how to get people together, know how to market. Like all of these events that I've worked, I have been involved in some way, shape, form, or fashion with the marketing, right? Like the I Got Away tour that happened. I was a part of the marketing and the social media strategy. The Johnny Molly tour, I've done marketing for that. Like I've done social stuff. I've worked social calendars. I've worked pages for artists before. Like big time gospel artists that and love and sing their music. But for whatever reason, I won't bring that same level to myself. Right. And so this is and I know I'm not the only one who does this, which is why I feel like talking about this is important. But like if you don't take any risks, you will have no reward. So if you don't put out the song, you'll never know if people would like it. Right. And that's even something for me. Like I have a song that I wrote. It's called For You. I wrote it back in college, like third year of college, I think. It's been written for forever. We finally did it last year at the Create as Well 2024. Um, We sang it there. It was received well. I have a screenshot of somebody that came to the event who recorded a piece of it and then put it out like on his social media. And so he, like, the person, one of the people like that follows him was like, hey, like, what's that song? Like, I like it. Is it out? And he's like, yeah, that's my brother's song, but it's not out yet. And the guy was like, let me know when it's out. I'll definitely buy it and stream it or whatever. And so that's been over a year and almost 2 months now. And that song has not gone out. It has nothing to do with the musicians. It has nothing to do with the producers that are the musicians. My brothers are amazing. They are very talented individuals. I have just not put it out. Why? Because I'm scared of how it will be received. Even though we did it once at the Create as well, with an audience that paid to be there. So it's not just my friends and family that were there. There were people I had never met before who came to that event. Then we did it again in August at Holy Hoodlum. And I literally was like, okay, you've done this twice. And so then people are starting to ask me, when are you putting this stuff out? Then on top of that, the first Create as well in 2024 as well, I put out two songs. So it was For You and then He Is For You, two songs. Very similar in title, but very different vibes. Holy Hoodlum, it was just that one. And then we did this production arrangement of Agnes Day, which apparently is how you say Agnes Day, Holy is the Lamb, whatever. Then this last Create as well put out a new song as well, which currently blanking on. Oh, the Valley song. Because like, what's the name of it? There is no name of it for real. We put out the Valley song. And so we're in rehearsal for the Create as well. And Jocelyn says, he looks at me, he says, when are you gonna put these songs out? He's like, you keep having us do these like new songs that people like. He's like, we like them, but you're not putting them out. And so my thing is like, at the end of the day, the question I would ask every creative is, why create if you're not going to put it out? It's just that simple. And that's something I have to ask myself now. And like, my thing is like, why write the song? Why go through writing the song? Why go through arranging the song? Why go through working with the musicians, excuse me, who stretch and pull things out of me and force me to do it over again and force me to think about different things and, write another verse, right? Like, do, like, make it go, like, all these things. Why go through all of that if you're not going to put it out? And that's a question for myself, but it's really a question for you all as well. Like, why go through the arduous exercise of creating something and not putting it out? And it doesn't have to be a song, but like, why write the book and not post it and publish it? Why write the poem and not post it or publish it? Why, write the novel or, paint the picture or take the picture or edit the picture? Because that's the thing. If you sit down and edit anything that you produce, like, you're spending time on something. So why spend time doing something when you could be sleeping or chilling or watching TV or whatever the case is, and you're editing stuff. If you're doing anything video wise and you're editing stuff and taking time and cutting stuff and doing whatever, you best believe that bad boy needs to go up. But I've got content that just doesn't go up. You know what I'm saying? And so a lot of us are just afraid to take that risk. And at the end of the day, it's like, okay, we've got to take the risk. I'm gonna tell you guys some more of my business and how I just have not taken risk in life. So in high school, my dad is a huge supporter of me. He really is. He's a great, great father. He wanted me to apply to MIT. He gave me the money to apply for the application or whatever, because I told him, I was like, oh, I don't have the money to pay the application fee. He was like, oh, okay, here's the $60, $75 or whatever. He just told me, he's like, just apply to MIT, just see if you get in. When I tell you, I did the application, I wrote the essay, I had it edited by people, like, people reviewed it, people were like, yeah, I think you're going to go well. I did not apply. I did not. To this day, I have no idea if I would have gotten into MIT or not. Now, UVA afforded me great people. I met amazing people. I think that really was where I needed to go ultimately, but I still don't know if I could have made it in, right? But even for UVA, which was at the time that I went, it was like noted as like the number one school in Virginia, and I think it was one of the top schools. It was definitely one of the top schools in the nation. It was considered like public Ivy League level like education. So I, for whatever reason in my mind, I just was confident enough to know that I was going to get into UVA. I didn't even really. I applied to other schools. I didn't put any effort to those. I did not, and I got in. It was great. It was wonderful, glorious. You know, my grades were amazing. I was super involved in and things. My SAT scores were pretty good. They weren't stellar, but my extracurriculars. I was in student government. I played sports. I did a bunch of other clubs. My, like I said, my academics were just through the roof. So I looked amazing on paper. So my thing was like, I just knew I was getting into those schools, but I didn't even think that I would have the chance to get into MIT. And now I don't know if I would get in or not, right? I don't know if I would have gotten into their engineering program. I don't know if I would have gotten into their general school. I don't know, but I'll never know now. I'll never know. And looking back at it, I should have taken the risk to at least see. I could have said no. I could have said no. I also turned down, like, I had naval someone from the Naval Academy was recruiting me to come in, and like they were gonna waive something or another. I don't know. But I felt like that was too much for me too. I was like, I couldn't go into US Naval Academy. Looking at it now, I wish I could have gone so I could have got some of them retirement checks and some of these military benefits and stuff like that. Like, I have all those different checks coming in and job offers and opportunities and whatever. I mean, the government is crazy now, but you know, before then, up until now, it was great. It was a great opportunity. So, but like, because I did not take the risk, now I don't have the reward. Again, I don't know if I would have gone. I don't know. But I can almost guarantee you that my parents would have probably forced me to go to the Naval Academy or MIT if I got a scholarship. Like I think they would have been like, yeah, you know, you're going there. Not that UVA is not a great school, but I know that they would have pushed me to go to the next level. And I just know that now, fast forward to all these years now, I'm still not taking risks. I'm still not posting everything that I could post. I'm still not applying to certain things, right? Like people send me stuff all the time. They're like, you should apply for this like influencer job. I'm not really an influencer in my mind, but somebody wants to hear my voice. There are people who have proven that you guys will listen to this podcast on a semi-weekly basis. I may put it out weekly, and I've noticed sometimes the views go up like after a week or two or whatever. But like I stalled on putting this out for a long time. Now, do I think that this is the right time for me to do it? If I gather more information, sure. But like I still almost every time I almost say, I'm not gonna post an episode. And I get texts from people that say, "Hey, that was really helpful," or "I really enjoyed the episode," or "That was funny. That was good. It made me laugh." Like just little stuff like that, or like the songs I make up at the beginning or sing. They're like, "Oh, I haven't heard that song in forever." Like little stuff like that. If I don't take the risk of just hitting post, then it's just not there. And so I'm committing myself this year to take more risks. And I'm terrified. I can be completely honest with you all. The idea that I would do an event somewhere outside of where I've done it for the past 3 years, it does terrify me in a way that makes no sense because it's not like I've done events in Toronto, in LA, in Houston, and Dallas, and Atlanta, and DC, and New York. And if you can do an event in New York City with its tiny lobbies, with its no parking lots, with its expensive venues, with all of the things that go into an event in New York City and the logistics that are so challenging about it. If I can do that, why can't I do it in my backyard of DC? Why? Why do I struggle so much to make this change? To not only take this risk, but to also build a big, like, plan for a bigger audience, right? One of the other things that Tyra and Micah told me was like, I plan for an audience of 50. And that's okay. But it does limit you because if I'm planning activities and programs and like conversation and stuff like that for 50 people, I'm never going to think about bigger. And here's the issue with not thinking about bigger. If in this instance, God is not always going to give you a huge platform. He's not. I do believe the creators will grow. I believe that there will be more people that will want to be a part of it, but I'm not sure if that will ever be the huge thing, if you know what I mean. Holy Hoodlum, on the other hand, Holy Hoodlum experience, the events that I do, I can honestly, like in my mind, I can truly see packed rooms for that. It's just fun. Like, especially the way that I'm trying to do this one. Like last year was fun. Last year was a lot of fun. We did have like the talking element at the end. I'm not going to do that again. We're going to probably do that throughout the year, but virtually, because I think that stuff is still really important, right? Like I can't do an event that's just fun and no Bible. Like you got to learn something, but the way that we learn will be different. It will be very interactive. It'll be more similar to the first year. We had like the talk show or whatever. But anyway, but we're not going to do the talk show this time. Whatever the case, the event, I can see it being packed. I can see it being a lot of fun, but I have got to get past the cringe. So I took time this year to better myself. So I'm doing strength coaching, Gallup strength coaching right now. I did a marketing audit. Like someone talked to me today actually about my social media. So we talked about like some things to change. I talked to a creative consultant about just like the direction of my business and like the direction of the brands and stuff like that. I talked to one other person. I'm blanking right now because I'm remembering them by their names and not necessarily the titles. But like I've invested in myself for these things. But here's the crazy part. I've invested the money for these like things, and all of them have essentially told me the same thing. You have great content, you have great stuff, you have great ideas. You need to post more, you need to show up more, you need to push past the cringe, like just, from different stuff. And you need to let your visions run free. And I think that's one of the things that really got me in my strengths coaching. My top strength, it's Gallup Strengths Finders. My top strength, it's futuristic. So in my top strength, it it basically means that like I have the ability to see visions and like see things like happen and come to pass and stuff like that. And so for me, when reading that, I was not happy about that. Um, and my strength coach was like, "Why aren't you happy about that?" And I was like, "I'm not happy because in my mind, that means I can see the future, but I'm not seeing the future come to pass." And so he was like, "Oh, I see what you're saying." And he was like, "Could it be that you're not really letting yourself run wild with the vision properly so that we can get to that point?" So one of the things he was telling me was like, if I have these ideas and these visions, and this applies to creative, like all of us. If you have an idea and a vision, but you're not doing everything you can to communicate that vision to your team or the people around you or the people who are stakeholders in it, if you're not doing everything you can to communicate them to them the vision, or you're not doing everything you can to preserve the vision in general, why have the vision? Why even talk about it? So like when I thought about that, I was like, I think people understand the creed as well at this point, but I don't know if people really understand all that I want it to be or all that I see it to be. But that's just for this. Holy Hoodlum, I know people don't know everything about that because it's like the newer thing that I'm doing. And I think it kind of evolved and never changed. So from the first one to the second one, and now the third one, which is more like the first one, but it's also part of like the second one, but it's a mix of stuff and it's just like stuff to get out. But like I need to be talking about it all the time. I just need to, but I don't want to because I don't want to be cringy. I don't want to be salesy. But essentially, when it comes time to August, I want you to buy a ticket. So it is salesy. It is cringy. Like I want the people to be there. I want the people to to participate. Like I want people to come. And I want you to be a part. I want you to have fun. I want you to come relax, have a nice night out in the summer that's not you at a lounge or getting drunk. Like just have some good clean fun that you won't have a hangover for like afterwards. Like that's the goal. We are 30 plus. Like hit it, go to the event, have some fun and go home, right? But I say all that to say learn to take the risk. And there are so many things that God has given each one of you all, and I would hate to not see them come to pass. And the crazy thing is, people like me, I know there are more people like me out there, that the only thing stopping you is you, right? This is not to sound cocky, but I know how to put on an event. I know how to market an event. I know all of that stuff. I have stuff to learn, but I know way more than the basics. I know the intermediates. I know the advanced stuff. I know how you think through you know, crowd control. I know how you think through people coming in. I like none of that stuff eludes me. Right? Like if you start talking about an event, I can tell you the pitfalls right now. I have the knowledge, the wherewithal, the background information, like all of the above. It just I have it. So right now, the only thing stopping me is me, and I want to challenge you to think what is the thing that's stopping you? Like we often will say money, but let's get money out of the way because finances are always going to be an issue. We always going to need more money. But even in that, are you stopping yourself from getting more money? Like for the first create as well, I asked my friends and family to donate to that, and they gave, and they made up majority of the budget. Just be honest. So my thing is, I don't want to ask people every time. I haven't asked people since 2022, and I know the economy is bad now, but I'm gonna ask again this year because guess what? If I have this bigger idea now and this bigger venue and it's these bigger costs, I cannot run this business off of my bank account. I can't. I can't. Because then it's always going to be restricted to what I can do. But if I get to the point where I can start putting out real sponsor packets and getting people to come through for the event and come through and pay for, sponsor the musicians or sponsor whatever, like these they will be more and more fired because when you have more money, then you have less excuse of that being your problem. So if you give me more money, I know exactly what to do with it. But I also need to go get the money. I need to push myself to say, let's go back to doing sponsor packets. Let's ask people. Let's not be afraid of being told no. Let's do a crowdfunding campaign. Let's just make it do what it do. Like, and again, that's on me, right? That's on me saying, like, do I trust myself to just have a team, right? Even a team. Why have a team? Like when I have a team, and I do have a team, they're great people, but they really only are active on the day of the event. That's not their fault. That's my fault. And it's not because I can't lead a team, because I can. But in my mind, I'm like, oh, I don't want to bother them. I don't want to ask them stuff. I don't feel like it's worth the risk of them saying no or worth the risk of them possibly messing something up or whatever the case is. Like, get out of your own way. So we're gonna end this because, y'all know all the business now. And that's totally fine. But what I want us I personally am going to take more risks this year. So I'm gonna be talking about that on social media. I'm gonna do kind of like a risk challenge. And it'll start in April because I need to get myself together. So I'm taking March. I'm not taking March off. You'll still see content. But we're honoring Women's History Month in March. So I'm doing interviews with some great women that I know in my life. So the 4 weeks in March of the podcast will be me and some amazing women. So I'm really excited about that. But starting in April, which is after March, yeah, I have to just make sure in my mind. Starting in April, we're gonna actually start a series on the podcast about producing, and not so much like music production stuff like that, but actually like taking a vision and producing it. So like because a lot of us get stuck at the execution phase. A lot of us can dream, right? And I think a lot of what we've been talking about, whether I realize it or not, is like the dreaming stuff so far. My problem is not the dreaming. Well, my problem is not the dreaming. The problem I have is taking the risk to execute. Because my execution is A1. I'm like, that's what people hire me for. They hire me to create stuff. They hire me to make stuff happen. I make stuff happen. But I don't take the risk for myself. So then for myself, because that risk is like the stopgap for me, then that prevents me from dreaming bigger. Because I'm like, because I know I still have made a vow to myself to execute. So instead of taking the risk, I just say, all right, let's bring the dream down. And that goes against my natural strength of being futuristic and being a dreamer, which then means that I'm my strengths coach, Jocelyn, he said to me, he said, you're being mean to yourself. He's like, you're being cruel. You're not letting your visions and stuff run free. And to that, I say, you're right. So I'm gonna stop being mean to myself. But I'm gonna leave us with this scripture. I know it by heart, but I just want to make sure we're right. But it's uh Joshua 1:8 and 9. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened, and do not be dismayed. For the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. So I say that because one, that was when the Lord was talking to Aaron and he had to take over from Moses. And Moses had been the big guy on the scene. Moses had been the one who had led the children of Israel to the promised land, essentially. And now Joshua, I'm sorry, did I say Aaron? I think I said Aaron. Joshua is the subject of this. Joshua is being told by the Lord, hey, Moses is dead. You're in charge now. It is your job to lead the children of Israel. That is a big feat. That is a big risk. That is something scary. That is something monumental. It's massive for what he was prepared for. But guess what? The kicker of this is that God told you to be strong and courageous, not just because in yourself, but he said because the Lord is with you. So anything that God is calling you to create and to do, if God is calling you to do it, you have to be strong and courageous because he's with you, not just out of your own merit, right? Like there's plenty of stuff to fear. Like I think it was Franklin D. Roosevelt maybe that said like the only thing to fear is fear itself. Wrong. There are several things to fear. I hate that quote because me as a like a realist, and one of my other strengths is being analytical, being very analytical and seeing stuff, I can tell you all the pitfalls, but the pitfalls should never make you not do something. It should make you do stuff differently. But the pitfall should never make you stop. And that's what it is with these risks. The risk, analyze the risk, know your risk, like know how to mitigate your risk as well. But don't let your risk stop you from taking the risk, calculated risk. And even at times, some uncalculated ones too. Like me doing this event in DC, unprecedented, uncalculated, kind of crazy, heart's palpitating already. Like every time I think about it, it's like, wow, that just seems weird. Because here's the other thing, and that's the last thing I'll say with the risk. When we take these risks, a lot of times we're afraid because we know we can't go back. So my mind is like, if I go this route and I do this event in DC, then I probably can never do this again just in Woodbridge. So that means from now on, I am saying to myself that this is the caliber that I'm going to be at. And one day, possibly soon, it will be you can't just do it in DC. People want you to do it in Atlanta. People want you to do it in Dallas. People want you to do it in Richmond. People want you to do it in Baltimore. People want you to do it in New York. Lord, that would just be crazy. Not because New York's like, oh, that's a great thing, but like doing business in New York, well, yeah, ghetto, tomato, tomato, don't want to do it. Don't piss me off, New York. That's one of the cities I hate doing stuff in like that. But I'm saying all this to say is like, once you start something, I think the fear is really success. And for me, it's I have a fear of failure and I have a fear of success. And at this point, I don't know which one's stronger. But I also know that if I don't do stuff, it bothers me, it torments me, it haunts me at night. So I've got to do it. So be on the lookout for the flyer to come out probably a lot earlier this year because baby's got a market. And I'm probably going to wear you down and worry you. And I'm sorry in advance. So just buy your ticket early so you can ignore everything. Or, buy at the last minute like usual and just give me an even bigger heart attack this time. So, yeah. So we'll see. So I'm going to do come April, we're going to do like producing. We're going to talk about the actual art of producing. And I think that makes sense because once April hits, that's like springtime for real. And like following the natural rhythm of the earth, Jasmine taught me that, like that's when stuff starts to grow. And I think like we have to get to the point where we're growing. We're not all growing to thousands, right? I don't know if the creators will ever be thousands. I don't know if Holy Hoodlum will be thousands. but I do think that we need to grow, and growth looks different for different situations, different people, different things, right? Even the podcast, like, it's gonna get a facelift. Like, I'm gonna start working with a producer for the podcast, Tyra, with some ideas and some stuff for said podcast. So to even enhance your viewing and watching experience, like, who knows, like she was, I always say one more thing, but here I am. She was like, how do you know that you can't do Create as Well live podcast shows? And that could be your new thing, one of your new things, right? You do your big shows at home, but then on the road you go do podcast shows. And I was like, what? And she was like, people love that kind of stuff. People want that kind of stuff. But if you're not presenting yourself in a certain way, and if you're not doing certain things, everything that you can, like, you're not doing it. And then the thing about it is, I remember I produce other people's podcasts, and I don't put the same, I just don't. But anyway, so moral of the story, take the risk, be cringe. That's it. That's all I got. Yeah. So see you in March, but we'll have a guest every week, which is kind of cool because you get to hear different voices. I'm really excited to honor the women in my life for sure because they deserve it. And I think they've got some really great stories that will really benefit people. And sometimes, you don't need to hear me talk all the time. So, but I'll come back swinging in April for sure with like the solo stuff. And even then, we'll be producing with other people. And I'm going to start reaching out to people that to me are like, risks, like just taking risk all year long. So there might be some familiar voices that you might know that will be on the podcast from now on. So until then, I'm gonna always drop something. I don't know.